Good evening, everyone. Here's another Rapid Rambles where we take a look at anything indie, mod, or retro related with some gameplay and or first impressions. Wow, after 9 years we finally have Silksong in our hands. We'll start out as a simple DLC. After 9 years, slowly evolved into a full-blown metroidvania sequel that nearly doubled the size of the original Hollow Knight. And let me tell you, I don't know if it's getting older as a gamer, but this sequel has already humbled me more than I'd like to admit. I've sunk hours into Silksong and I'm convinced that I barely scratched the surface. The world is massive, sprawling, layered, and absolutely gorgeous, but it's also punishing. I've died so many times in the exact same spot, it's almost comical. Mostly sad. But all my time in Silksong has far been on the Nintendo Switch 2, and it's a perfect place to play. I would imagine even on the Switch 1, just with its versatility. I guess you could make the same argument with the Steam Deck and other handheld PCs, but with the Switch 2 you have the ease of use and a little bit more compact with the portability and the crisp 1080p screen as opposed to the Steam Deck's 800p. But on my plane trip to Japan, I got to test both tabletop mode and handheld mode, and it felt amazing to have such a massive metroidvania game like this just inches away from my face, flying across the Pacific. Especially since I actually, by luck alone, managed to get a whole row for myself. So I was laid down and I had the middle seat tray dispenser out, and then that's where I had my Switch 2 laid up, and I was laid down and it was pretty chill. It made that 10-hour plane ride just that much more easier. Once I got home, I docked the Switch 2 and captured footage on my PC using my capture card. The 1080p screen on the Switch 2 makes the art style pop and handheld, but playing it like in 4K or 2K, I believe, makes the colors look deeper, the hand-drawn backgrounds feel crisp, and the animation is buttery smooth. Especially like even the details in the background of like the little animations, just the attention to details, just chef's kiss. But Team Cherry's style has already aged beautifully, but on this screen it's pretty much next level on this new hardware, I would imagine. Even the tiny details like environmental particles, like when you're hitting an enemy and they're like either bleeding out or like when they explode and they crap out rose beads, and the enemy silhouettes have an extra layer to polish. It's honestly stunning how well Silksong runs and how gorgeous it looks no matter how you're playing, whether it's slouched on a flight, tabletop room in a hotel, or big screen on the desk. So let's go on to traversing the world. From the starting area, Grand Bellway, you get a sense of familiarity. Like it's very, like the music, the tone, and the ambience is really similar to Hollow Knight, which is understandable. It's in the same universe, and actually Silksong, I believe, is a chronological predecessor to Hollow Knight. But at the same time, it's very refreshing. Then you head down to Moss Grotto and make your way down to Deep Docks, where I know I'm jumping ahead. This is for a different section, but that's where I left off, where after I defeated the Moss Mother. And in between, you make your way through the Abyss and the Hunter's March, where I got my ass handed to me like more than a handful of times. Each area just gets more immersive, more beautiful, and they each have their own biome, and the art style still holds up brilliantly every frame and feels alive and handcrafted. Silksong constantly tempts you to push deeper, revealing new paths, secret shortcuts, and unexpected twists, while punishing sloppy mistakes, which I have made plentiful of. That's the hook, the exploration that feels dangerous but rewarding. When it comes to like the movement and core mechanics, mechanically it's pretty much set up the same way as Hollow Knight, where you start off with basically nothing, just your basic walking, jumping, and slash attacks. And as you progress, you unlock charms, or in Silksong's cases, new badges, along with movement upgrades and combat skills. Like for example, I recently unlocked the dash movement, which allowed me to go back to previous areas and traverse even further by being able to reach platforms I wasn't able to before by like jumping, dashing, and then jumping again. I know I would imagine other basic movements that I haven't unlocked it that I will, that are pretty standard from what I've seen, like the way the environment setup are is like wall jumping, what else, like the charge attack and all that other good stuff. But for right now, like, I'm at the Moss Mothers, there's still this constant feeling that the game is just waiting to hand me something new and game changing right after it smacks me down like more than a handful of times. Speaking of the Moss Mother and other boss encounters, so far the combat has been both punishing and rewarding. Even common enemies can feel like their own little mini bosses when you're still learning their attack patterns. Sometimes you walk in thinking it's just another bug, but then it wipes you out like in seconds, because either you misread the move, you haven't studied his attack pattern, or like, and the AI I think have improved in this game. Like they're not just like 1 2 3 1 2 3 like their movements or whatever. Like they're kind of autonomous, or maybe I just suck, but yeah, it keeps you sharp and it makes exploration feel a lot more tense and exciting, especially when you die once and you're trying to retrieve your hundreds of rose beads and hoping that you don't die on the way back to where you died originally. As for the first impressions, I made it to Deep Docks, and like I mentioned, took down the Moss Mother, the first main stage boss. But before that, you do unlock fast travel, which kind of helps. Not so much in the beginning, but I'm sure, like I mentioned, I barely scratched the surface, so there's gonna be a bunch of biomes, like getting from the top of the Hollow's Nest to, like, I don't know how far this deep this rabbit hole goes, but yeah. But the way you unlock fast travel is by taking down the Bell Beast. It took me a few tries where like he does his like jump dive attack pattern, and then like he pops out of the ground and like kind of shakes his ass and shoots bells at you. But after a few tries, I did manage to take him down and unlocking the fast travel points. And then in order to unlock more fast travel points, you don't have to defeat the Bell Boss again and the Bell Beast, but you do have to pay a toll. And I believe you only pay it once, and then once you unlock it, each point, then you can go back and forth as many times as you want for free. Another cool moment was early on, like you're kind of like a sub boss encounter where you team up with Chakra, and you're stuck in like in this tight corridor, and you're fighting off like pretty much a gauntlet of bugs. And like I mentioned, some of these bugs are mini bosses of their own, and you would think that with Chakra's help, like it would have maybe taken me 1 or 2 tries in order to take down this segment, but no, it took me a handful of tries. But it was a nice surprise, and it was help. I managed to read the patterns and how to take advantage of Chakra's assistance. And once you take them down, Chakra becomes like a merchant shop where she gives you vital like maps and like charms add to your map. And then like with speaking of like unlockables and shop purchases, Silksong keeps that growth going, starting from like the bare bones movement like I mentioned before, and a single weapon, which is your nail, and you gradually pick up badges, new moves, and upgrades, and it changes how you play the game and explore. And even with the dash, like I mentioned the dash before, yeah, it was nice to use for exploration, but also it helps you in combat. Like it adds an extra layer of depth to your movements, and when you're fighting somebody, like I've done this a few times where like I jump and then I accidentally land on the enemy, so I take damage. But like with the dash movement, you can jump and then like you'll dash forward and then over the enemy or whatever. So that was pretty cool. There's definitely a fair amount of backtracking, especially if you die like a lot like I do. But the game world is so beautiful and interconnected that you barely notice it. Like you're so immersed, and like I don't know, like there's some kind of like addiction of no matter how many times you die, and there's some kind of addiction within the frustration and exploration of this game that just like one more try, or like even if you lose everything, fuck it, let me try it again, well, just one more run. And then but yeah, like this game, it keeps you hooked. Like Team Cherry's had this in the oven for 9 years, and they delivered. I'm sure this is a game of the year contender. So that's the magic of Silksong so far. It's a familiar but bigger, tougher, and somehow even more beautiful, that it brutally punishes you and teaches you and keeps you pulling in deeper into this world. And if what I've seen so far is only the beginning, I just can't wait to try out more and like unlock more mechanics. And what I've noticed, at least with me, like what makes a game harder is more so having limited movement. So having more in your arsenal, I wouldn't say makes the game easier. Well, at least for me, it kind of makes it easier. So I probably won't die as much. And then obviously, as you play more and die more, you're actually practicing, so you get to get better with time. But yeah, if you started Silksong yourself, let me know where you're at in the comments. Which bosses got you stuck, or what moment blew your mind away? And if you're new here and like mods, indie games, and retro rambles, consider subscribing for more rapid rambles and first impressions like this. Until next time, keep exploring, keep dying, hopefully not as much as me, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thank you and have a nice day. Or night. Bye.